And I'm pretty excited about the red-blue burn deck that's blue-red Delver. And on the other side of the table, Punishing Jund, a newish archetype, which is kind of an oldish archetype, and it's been having some success recently in Legacy.
Yeah, we saw Punishing Fire used to really good effect in the Maverick deck when it decided to splash it. Then Jund came around with Deathrite Shaman. Now Jund has adopted the Punishing Fire strategy. And looks like both players are thinking about their hands, and they are keeping. Jeff leads with a Verdant Catacombs and passes the turn. And speaking of that card, Punishing Fire, I think it will be very important in this match, being able to take out, as I got on the list, Delver of Secrets, Goblin Guide, Grim Lavamancer, and Vendilion Click. Really all the offense in terms of creatures that Josh has in his deck. So we see that Verdant Catacombs getting sacrificed, and that is going to resolve. Bayou comes out for Jeff. And I don't see Wasteland on Josh's deck list, so those non-basics are pretty safe.
Well, safe except for the price of progress.
There are 3 copies of Price of Progress that Jeff definitely has to worry about. We see a Hymn to Torok here, a great card against a burn deck, against an aggressive deck that if you can cast it when they have cards in hand, getting 2 of those spells out. If you hit a burn spell, if you hit 2 burn spells, it's going to gain you 3, 5, 6, however many life. If you hit creatures, you know, that's great too.
If you're thinking that Jeff Blyden looks familiar, you might remember him from the invitational coverage in 2011, the Pat Cox Invitational in Indianapolis.
And we'll see a Spell Pierce take down that Hymn to Torok. And Josh playing a Scalding Tarn and a Ponder. Looking for some more options. Island, Scalding Tarn, and what looks like a Vendilion Click, and he is not interested in any of those. Gonna shuffle and see what he gets.
One of the cards that I've been having, I don't know if this is kind of maybe a little bit bonkers, but I've been having random Legacy thoughts about lately. The cheapest little redirect that you can cast, the name right now is escaping me, blue instant redirect unless they spend 2.
Is it Divert?
Divert, yeah. Thank you. I've been having random thoughts about Divert because I've been seeing so many Hymn to Toroks lately, and I'm just picturing them going, Hymn you, and you're like, Hymn you?
I did actually, I went up to Edison for the Open recently, and I did see a Divert hit a Hymn to Torok in the match. It was pretty brutal.
Brian Braun-Dwin apparently had his Hymn to Torok diverted at the Invitational. I was not watching that match. I was on a break. But it was certainly one of those things that, I don't know, there are little coverage legends where people go, oh my god, did you see that? Whoa.
We see the Goblin Guide come in here for 2 damage, revealing a Grove of the Burn Willows that goes straight to Jeff's hand, and he plays that. And Punishing Fire takes out the Goblin Guide.
Now we see the combo, Grove of the Burn Willows and Punishing Fire. At will, that Punishing Fire can come back. You tap the Grove of the Burn Willows, the life gain happens for your opponent, and then you use that mana to bring back the Punishing Fire.
And all 16 of the creatures in Josh's deck are vulnerable to Punishing Fire. Each one of them dies to a single Punishing Fire. None of them have more than 2 toughness. So that's going to turn off a really big portion of Josh's deck. We'll see what he can do with his burn spells, but I don't see him getting much more damage in with creatures.
Main phase Brainstorm, best kind of Brainstorm.
You see a Force of Will, a Chain Lightning, and another card added to Josh's hand. There's a Price of Progress, a Lightning Bolt. So a lot of direct damage, including that Price of Progress, which right now would hit Jeff for 6. And looking at Jeff's deck, wondering if he has any ways to gain life. Jeff has 4 Deathrite Shamans that he can use to gain life. And Jeff actually, in addition, this is pretty exciting, in addition to
Natural
the
orders?
Punishing Fires,
Yes.
he has 4 copies of Natural Order and 4 copies of Lotus Cobra, and he can Natural Order into Progenitus, which he has 1 copy of. So Jeff really...
The no punish Jund?
Yeah, looking at... Well, what would I say? This is sort of like, if you remember Reed Duke had a Punishing Fire Natural Order rug deck at one point that he was doing really well with. This is, to me, this is similar to that, except it's got black for discard and that other activation on Deathrite Shaman and Abrupt Decay instead of the counter spells that blue provides. So Jeff is actually a pretty controlling version of Jund.
Yeah, no Jund.
Yep. Punishing no Jund. He does have Punishing Fire and Natural Order and Jund.
I actually think that Jeff Blyden might be in a lot of trouble in this game. We are now at the point where he'll take 8 damage from a Price of Progress, and unless he gets rid of it with Thoughtseize, ouch, or Hymn to Turok, he could just... Wow, he is practically dead here.
Yeah, he adds that second Grove of the Burn Willows, and Jeff, without any quick ways to gain life, as you said, could be in a lot of trouble.
Now, Jeff, if he knows the format well, should be able to determine that he is not playing against a Rug Delver here.
Ooh.
He should be able to determine, oh my god, 10.
Jeez.
10, count them, 10 damage. Take 10?
And that's a Price of Progress for a ton of life.
Ouch.
I can't imagine Jeff was expecting that if he played out the
Yeah.
the 5th non-basic there.
Chain?
And we see a Chain Lightning,
And
that's
there we
game.
go. Oh, and Josh laughing and smiling. Jeff, furrowed brow, looking at the top few cards, wondering, was there something else I could have done there?
Jeff has 2 basic lands that he can use to help fight against that Price of Progress, but unless he draws them naturally or chooses to fetch them out, that's going to be a really rough card for him.
Yeah, unfortunately for him, his options for fighting against Price of Progress include, I don't know, basically sideways options like Hymn to Torak, and then his very few Deathrite Shamans, and then recovering from damage with Scavenging Ooze if there's anything to eat.
Yeah, we may see him add a couple of Scavenging Oozes here. Wouldn't surprise me. Josh has quite a lot of creatures. Enough to maybe gain Jeff a couple life. And looking through Jeff's sideboard, I could see him bringing in the Scavenging Oozes. I could see him bringing in that Thrun as a blocker against the ground creatures of Josh and just an uncounterable, untargetable threat.
One of the cards I actually hope that we see, I hope that we see Chains of Mephistopheles make an appearance from Jeff Blyden's sideboard. If you're not familiar with Chains of Mephistopheles, when we get a chance, we're going to try to get that on the monitor for you. But Chains of Mephistopheles... Oh, our director is telling me no, no, no. Well, that's a shame, director. Chains of Mephistopheles is a kind of anti-combo card, usually. It's black 1 enchantment. The Oracle text is the important text, because the printed text from Legacy, it's been so long that since this card has been printed, that you have to get the actual Oracle text, which is... If a player would draw a card, except the first one he or she draws in his or her draw step each turn, that player discards a card instead. If the player discards a card this way, he or she draws a card. If the player doesn't discard a card this way, he or she puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Now, why would that be at all useful in this matchup? There are a ton of cards that Jeff Blyden has that are not very good, and a Chains of Mephistopheles is incredible against Brainstorm, and solid against cards like Ponder. And you know what? Jeff simply does not have very many sideboard cards, and turning off Brainstorm is really good against a deck that generally is expecting to put together its damage with Snapcaster Brainstorm Ponders to find the right amount of damage.
Yeah, speaking of Chains of Mephistopheles, I'm actually one of the people who read the regular text and read the Oracle text. Still couldn't really figure out what it did. I had it in the sideboard of a Legacy deck I was playing on Magic Online because it was in an article that Reed Duke wrote, and I never boarded it in because I kept reading it and not really, this might be good or it might do nothing. I don't actually know what it does.
Yeah, well, basically, let's pretend that Josh also doesn't know what it does and it happens to be in play. And Josh makes the mistake of main phase brainstorming. What will happen then is Josh will end up discarding 3 cards to his brainstorm, then and drawing the cards as it happens, and then putting the 2 cards back. So he'll be down a ton of cards for the privilege of casting brainstorm.
Yeah, it's very effective against that card in particular. And it's a card that, can trick people if they don't know what it does. And I can't really fault someone for not knowing what it does.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when Chains of Mephistopheles was printed, people wondered what the heck it did, and it hasn't gotten any better. Now, I really believe that Jeff Blyden, if you look at his hoodie, he is the kind of person that knows exactly what it does. Because he's old school, I can tell.
It does seem that way. And, I like a lot of the cards Jeff has for this matchup. I think the getting down an early Progenitus, Josh does not have good ways to deal with that. Having that recursive punishing fire, all Josh's creatures are vulnerable to that, as I mentioned. But we saw Josh has those Price of Progress, and they can be huge.
I expect we're going to see Josh Sawyer bring in Sulfuric Vortex as well. Sulfuric Vortex and another awesome enchantment, red 1. And what Sulfuric Vortex says, players cannot gain life, and during every player's upkeep, that player loses or takes 2 damage.
Yeah, I think we will see that come in, just to try to have a repeatable damage source against Jeff that he might not be able to interact with as profitably.
One thing that I think is really crazy about Josh Sawyer's deck, and I mean crazy like a fox, Josh Sawyer has, I've never in my entire life seen this before, Josh Sawyer has Lava Spike in his sideboard.
Huh.
Now, I believe there has to be a reason. I'm guessing it's that in certain matchups, the game comes down to this. It is a pure foot race, and it is going to be inches, like turn 3, turn 4, who can get there faster. And Lava Spike is probably really solid in that race. He already has Chain Lightnings and Lightning Bolts, but wow, Lava Spike.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Josh's deck is a burn deck. He's got a few more creatures, more repeatable sources of damage. He's got those brainstorms to filter, and he has just a little bit of protection. But in a race where he doesn't think that protection is going to help, he may just want to go all out, board in those Lava Spikes, and make his deck just that much faster.
Now, I see, looking at the screen, our director has this listed as Blue-Red Delver, but I always like to think of this as Blue-Red Burn. This is a deck that is going for the throat. Oh, a very important turn 1 play, Deathrite Shaman.
So we'll see if Josh has an answer for that. If not, it could gain a substantial amount of life. Josh has a Delver of Secrets, another great 1-drop. And we'll see what Jeff comes up with.
Delver of Secrets, breakout card when it was printed. The same thing can be said for Deathrite Shaman. Deathrite Shaman has been seeing play in practically every format. I know, talking to some people that play Vintage, there has been rumblings of Deathrite Shaman in Vintage, though I don't know if it has had any true success in that format yet.
Huh, well that would be very impressive, the full gambit of formats for Deathrite Shaman.
Doesn't happen very often.
And,
it's funny to me that Deathrite Shaman is probably at its worst in Standard.
Yeah. And we see a forest come out with a little bit of altered art there.
I can't tell what's on that altar, but it kind of looks neat from a distance.
Yeah. And a lot of cards for Jeff, so we'll see. Looks like he's going to thinking about removing that Wooded Foothills to produce 1 mana. And instead, just looks like it just passes the turn. Josh has a Ponder, Daze, Chain Lightning, and Force of Will. I would not be surprised if we saw that Chain Lightning take out the Deathrite Shaman. As the longer Josh waits, the more likely it is. We do see that Chain Lightning, if Jeff did have 2 red mana, he could redirect it. Not redirect it, but make a copy of it and choose his own targets for it. Could take out that Delver. He's going to get that Chain Lightning fired off before Jeff has access to 2 red mana, and we do see Delver come in here for 1 damage, not flipped yet.
Now, on Twitter, William Howe85 brings up Sulfuric Vortex, much like our director did off camera, that it's an excellent way to shut down Punishing Fire as well, which is also true. I believe, though, that that's kind of incidentally hating out Jeff Blyden here. Its purpose in the sideboard is almost certainly mostly for the other elements, but it's great that it also does that.
Yeah, so because it makes both players unable to gain life, when Josh plays the Sulfuric Vortex, he's not going to gain life even if Jeff wants him to with that Grove, so Jeff is not going to be able to return Punishing Fire. Looks like Delver has flipped off of a Force of Will that was on top of Josh's library from that Ponder.
Make sure you join in the conversation on Twitter as well. Hashtag SCGCIN at SCG Live.
And Josh with a Force of Will, a red card that looked like it might be a Grim Lavamancer. Delver coming in for 3. And we'll see if Josh has a follow-up play.
There are such narrow margins in all of the burn-based decks where you are essentially going for these final little inches to get damage in many races, particularly against the card Tarmogoyf. And the big reason for that is Tarmogoyf is such an efficient beatdown creature that when you're in a race with it, it's a very difficult thing to try to fight. But if you direct your burn spells against the Tarmogoyf, you've taken them not at the opponent's head, and you might not be able to finish them off.
Yeah, Tarmogoyf presents a difficult problem trying to decide whether to fight the Tarmogoyf and potentially lose to the other cards the player has, or just maybe lose to the Tarmogoyf straight up. We're going to see 4 mana tapped here for Thrun.
Wow, Josh Sawyer looks down. Thrun what?
Yeah, that is a real beating here. Uncounterable, untargetable. It's going to block whatever Josh has on the ground, and also probably assist him a lot in the race should he choose to keep attacking with that Tarmogoyf, which if he will.
If you're wondering, that is the last Jund in Jeff's deck. The last Thrun in Jeff's deck. There are no other Thruns, and it came in from the sideboard. He boarded it in here.
Yep, boarded it in and drew the one that he has in his 75. So we see the players pause for a minute, and Jeff comes in with Tarmogoyf and Thrun. It looks like Grim Lavamancer may be jumping in the way of, looks like Thrun.
Yep, Grim Lavamancer, I'm not sure how much fuel it has to eat. It looks like he is not activating the ability. Maybe he does not have enough fuel, or maybe, because I can't tell if there's only the one card there or not, or maybe he wants to use his red mana in other ways at the end of the turn. I think I see a Price of Progress, so.
Yeah, well, he may go with that. We see Punishing Fire, and Force of Will looks to counter that.
Gets rid of Snapcaster.
Josh a little low on mana, so understandable why he would want to trade that Snapcaster to keep his Delver in play, his one source of repeatable damage.
He says to Josh, gain a life, 1 life. Price of Progress at the end of the turn. Take 8, Jeff.
I believe it's 6 because
there's a single forest. That alternate little swoop on there got me. So take 6.
So we see Jeff drops a 6. And
a single burn spell away from death. Boom! Are you dead?
Wow.
That is all. Red-blue burn takes down No Jund.
So yeah, in both matches, Jeff started to put something together, and then Josh just, Price of Progress, another burn spell, and right out of there.
Price of Progress, one of the all-time great cards for a burn player. I cannot tell you how often I have cast Price of Progress against someone and had their unfair deck fall to pieces. You know, nice deck there. Take a lot.
Yeah, and a really interesting anti-non-basic land card. You know, we've seen other cards like Blood Moon that are really not fun to play against. You know, your opponent plays a Blood Moon and you just sit there being able to do nothing.
Yeah, that's great.
Price of Progress